Well, welcome everybody for coming tonight. My name is Megan Muller. I work for the City of Rochester in the Communications and Engagement Department, and I'm joined with a few of my colleagues tonight to bring you some updates and answer some of your questions about some service changes that are coming to Rochester Public Transit. A couple of housekeeping things. We are going to ask that you please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted while Mike is giving his presentation. And depending on the crowd size, we may keep that request standing and have a more controlled way of getting comments or questions in, so that way we are ensure everybody's questions are being heard and answered. If the group stays small, we'll let you know if we want to go the route of letting you unmute and asking your questions that way. During the conversation, during the presentation from Mike, by all means, use that chat feature on the top bar of your screen there to drop questions in as they come up. As you're hearing the presentation and when that question comes in, that's a great way to note that question. Myself and my colleague Rachel are going to be watching that chat thread and those questions that come in to make sure when Mike is done with his presentation that we can circle back to those questions and get them answered and give more context. And if there's things that are we are unable to answer tonight, to make sure that we find a way to get back in touch with you to help provide those answers when we're able to track them down. In just a second, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mike. Mike Collins is our transit project manager, and I believe that the plan for tonight is for Mike to share an overview of how we're collecting feedback and engaging with the community to what feedback we've heard about route changes and what those changes are going to be moving forward. And also, if you've been in town for a little while, you understand there's no shortage of construction happening and coming in the new upcoming construction season. So I believe Mike is going to touch on a little bit of what we expect some of those impacts to be and how transit is going to be accommodating riders and the routes of how the bus is going to be working around those, ensuring that folks are able to get where they need to be reliably and on time and comfortably. And then, of course, hitting on the topic that some of you have joined us here tonight on Route 412, specifically some changes that are being proposed to that route. I want to make sure that I've seen dropped in the chat. Rachel's already put it in there on one of the tools we're using for collecting feedback, and that is an online survey. So after the presentation tonight, by all means, click on that link and head on over to our survey where you can provide your insights, your perspectives on some transit service impacts and changes that will be coming. From there, I will take it on over to Mike to get us started on this presentation. Thanks, Mike.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. So yeah, as Megan was saying, the reason we're here today is to walk the community through our spring changes. We'll get into the details in a minute, but just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Mike Collins. I'm the Transit Project Manager with Rochester Public Transit, and I'm kind of the point person for this project and the service changes that are coming up. So just to walk through the agenda today, we're going to discuss with the group the public engagement process. We're then going to dive into some of the construction impacts, the relocation to Central Park, the St. Mary's relocation, Route 412, and timeline and next steps. And then, of course, we'll open it up for questions, as Megan had said. And then just as kind of a general summary before we move on to the next slide, we will say, just kind of as an overview, what we are expecting is due to construction that we will need to relocate our downtown transit center to Central Park for a period of between 1.5 to 2 years, depending on construction length. That will likely start in March, with March 16th being the target date we're working with currently. And the end date is still in flux, but it will be sometime in 2026. So just kind of a brief summary before I dive into some of the more specific details. In terms of public engagement, as Megan has alluded to, we do have an online Polco survey. We do encourage everybody who's on this call and will watch this video later to log on there and take that survey. There are specific questions to riders and folks in neighborhoods that are affected by these changes. So that feedback is very important for us to incorporate into our route changes. We do ask that any and all feedback get back to us by January 23rd. That is the last date that we're able to take in that feedback and act upon it. So that is just one date to keep in mind. The Polco survey will close on that date, and that is the time when we need to get to work to compile all that feedback and finalize our routes. Obviously, we are all here today for the virtual open house. This is a citywide open house. That's why it was chosen online, so folks from all areas of the city can join. This is taking place, and again, there will be a Q&A, a chance for us to get your feedback through this meeting here. So diving into some of the more specific details here. So just to provide one disclaimer, I'm not here. I'm here representing Rochester Public Transit. I'm not here to announce any specific construction plans. All of those construction plans will come from their respective projects. What you're seeing displayed on the screen is more of a area of impact as it pertains to transit. So specific road closures, specific building work, utility work, all of that will come from the respective projects that are taking place. What's displayed on screen is really just how it affects RPT and our transit service. But just as I have this screen up, as you can see, there is a lot of construction going on. And if you look at my cursor, our downtown transit centers are right here on 2nd Street, which is one of the affected areas. And there are two projects that are taking place along 2nd Street. One is the Unbound project. The other is the Link Bus Rapid Transit project, and both of them affect bus service on 2nd Street. So our proposal is to move our transit center temporarily to Central Park during the time of construction. And then during the time of the construction near St. Mary's, we will need to relocate the St. Mary's stops as well. Both of these are temporary. All of these changes are temporary, but we want to make the community aware that they are temporary, but they are lasting longer than what would be a typical detour that you'd see through our normal transit service. So I've touched on some of this already. The relocation of our downtown transit centers is affected by both the Unbound and the Link BRT project. RPT plans to relocate to Central Park for the duration of 2025 and very likely into 2026. So just if you are a transit rider, to be aware that our relocation to Central Park will be for a longer period of time, but not a permanent period of time. Likewise, we are relocating the stop at St. Mary's. That one will be for a shorter period of time than the downtown transit center relocation. That one we will start when we move to Central Park, we will continue to service St. Mary's as we do today. When construction starts in the St. Mary's area, we will then relocate the St. Mary's stops, and we will be relocated in the area near St. Mary's for the duration of construction. Once construction is completed in the area near St. Mary's on 2nd Street, we will move back to 2nd Street near St. Mary's. So that's just kind of a disclaimer that the St. Mary's relocation will be a little bit shorter than the Central Park relocation. But we'll get into a little bit more details here in the next slides. So this is a proposed example route. Again, this is a temporary route that we are proposing. And this is during the period when both St. Mary's and our downtown transit centers are relocated. We displayed this here because we wanted to give the community an understanding of the proximity that we're able to get to both St. Mary's and the route that we're going to be taking through the neighborhoods. We obviously have a lot of very important stops all along 2nd Street. There are some important stops along here. Our downtown transit centers, which is our most busy transit locations, are near the Gonda building and the US Bank building downtown. And then, of course, St. Mary's Hospital. So we need to get our buses as close as possible to 2nd Street from Central Park to service those locations. This is our proposed route. So the closest we can get to these kind of middle stops, which would be near the Ronald McDonald House, we are proposing a stop that will be not too far from the Nicholas Apartments on Center Street. We have two options for the relocation of St. Mary's. One is at 11th and Center Street. The other is at 13th and Center Street. And again, this is an example route, so there will be some routes that will go north on 16th and some routes that will go south. This is just the one that we've chosen to provide an example. When we relocate to Central Park, we will have a very similar layout at the park to our relocation in 2023. So if you were a transit rider in 2023, the relocation setup will be very similar. Obviously, this will be a much longer period of time than in 2023. So we will be providing some updated signage and some updated amenities at the park that weren't there in 2023. But just to provide an example, I did put on the screen the layout that we had in 2023. There will be essentially 5 transit locations, one along the Jacobson building, and then the 4 sides of the park. Each side will have 3 stops, 3 loading areas. So that that will be identified when we move there by bus signage and other wayfinding techniques. But that is just something to be aware of, that this will be a likely similar layout to Central Park. The exact location of each bus number is still being worked out. So we will communicate that as soon as possible once those details are finalized. Central Park planned and amenities. So obviously we had been to Central Park previously, and we had some lessons learned from our previous relocation there. With this being an extended relocation, there are a few things that are already on our radar. One of the things that's already on our radar are driver's bathrooms. We are also aware that Central Park needs to be accessible to folks with mobility concerns. So we are working through how to make this relocation accessible for those folks. We are also coordinating on some Wayfare options and access to Subway and Skyway. And then we will improve our signage down there to make sure that everybody knows where their bus is located and how to get to their destination once they get dropped off at Central Park. So these are a few items that are already on our radar. We do look for feedback, and that is why I encourage everybody to take that survey. We are looking for feedback from the community in terms of what other amenities you'd like to see at the park to improve the transit rider experience. Just getting into a little bit more detail of the proposed St. Mary's relocations. Once again, we have 2 that we're considering. One is on Center Street near 11th, and the other one is on Center Street near 13th. The option near 11th Street is 0.3 miles away, or an 8-minute walk from St. Mary's door. The option near 13th Street is 0.2 miles away, or a 5-minute walk from St. Mary's door. So these are the 2 options that is unfortunately the closest our buses can get to St. Mary's during this relocation period, which is why we are definitely prioritizing moving back to 2nd Street as soon as construction concludes. We are planning during this service change period to make some adjustments to the Route 412. So Route 412, we closed IBM back in November. Our partnership with Mayo Clinic ended at that time, and so we did need to close the IBM Park and Ride. The IBM Park and Ride was serviced by Route 412. So to accommodate that closing and to provide a similar level of service to 75th Street Park and Ride as IBM has enjoyed, we needed to reroute the 412 to 75th Street to service that Park and Ride instead of IBM. With that, that changed the route geometry of the 412. So this took place on November 4th when our fall service changes came into play. We did get feedback from the community that there were a few things that they would like to see improved in our next service change. So we've taken that feedback to heart. We've looked at our maps, and we are proposing some changes to the 412. Just to walk through the 412 a little bit here on screen, the current route travels up to 55th Street. It goes, exits 52 on 55th Street. It then enters that northern neighborhood, flows through the sites, then gets on 65th, hits two apartment complexes, and then up to 75th Street. It then travels on 52, back down to 55th, gets off the highway, hits Walmart North, and then will hit Mayo Clinic Northwest, and then get back on the highway and travel down. So to improve this route, we are proposing that the bus travel up to 41st Street, get off the highway, hit Mayo Clinic Northwest and Walmart North first before it enters the neighborhoods, then travel on 55th Street, enter the neighborhoods. Some of the feedback that we did get was that the stops on Bandel Road were no longer serviced. The geometry of all the streets in this area are they're not all connected, which makes routing buses somewhat difficult. So we added this loop to get as close to Bandel Road as possible and still service those folks that used to enjoy a stop on Bandel Road. The bus will then continue on the route as it's currently planned. But once it gets up to 75th Street, it will now be a direct route downtown. So if you are taking the 412 to get to work, your time downtown will be improved with this new proposed route. I'll provide some route details here on the screen next. So just to compare and contrast, similar to the window above, the current 412 will start at currently the 412 starts at 5:08. The new one will start at 5:06, so very similar. The end time for the current 412 ends at 5:56. The end time for the proposed 412 will end at 6:51, and that was feedback that we got from some riders that they wanted to see extended service into the evening time, and we are happy to accommodate that and provide that extra hour of service in the evening. Time to downtown from 75th Street on the current 412 going indirect through Walmart North and Mayo Clinic Northwest is 24 minutes from 75th Street. During our proposed route, it will be 21 minutes, and that will be direct from 75th Street to St. Mary's. If you live in the Northwest neighborhood, it currently takes you about 40 minutes to get from your neighborhood downtown. In our proposed route, it will take about 36 minutes. I also put the distance from the removed Bandel Road stops. They were 0.3 miles and 0.4 miles away, respectively, during our current setup of the 412. We now have one that's 0.3 miles away, but the other one is only 0.1 miles away. So again, that is much closer to folks along that route that used to enjoy and ride from those Bandel Road stops. The total run time does go up from 58 minutes to 52 minutes, but I will say that is that's total run time, not necessarily people on buses. So we're trying to make the route as efficient as possible. So there is a little bit of increased run time, but as you can see from the numbers above, people's time on the bus will actually be less. We also eliminated some time stops, making the route more efficient. We went down from 12 time stops in the current setup to 8 time stops in the proposed setup. On the 412, we are hosting an open house next Tuesday on January 21st at the DSIC, which is the North Police Station. So if you are interested in hearing more about the 412, we encourage you to attend that open house. Detours. So as we've kind of explained, and as you might have seen earlier in the presentation, there are a decent amount of construction projects going on downtown. Those are just the ones that affect transit that we know about right now. We do ask all of our transit riders to be patient with us. There will be continual detours that aren't represented in any of the routes that we're proposing right at the moment. This is pretty typical for transit service. We regularly detour routes when there's construction projects. I suppose I'm adding this disclaimer because we're expecting a few more detours due to the volume of construction that's taking place downtown. Timeline and next steps. So like I said at the beginning of the presentation, all public feedback is due back to us by January 23rd. Between January 23rd and early February is when we will get to work finalizing the routes, making sure we are incorporating the feedback as best we can into our final route plans. Between February 1st and March 17th is when folks will start to see some improvements to Central Park. That is when we'll start preparing for ADA loading pads and other amenities, toilet, bathrooms, and things of that nature. We need to get Central Park ready for the volume of transit users that will now be going there. On March 16th is when we can anticipate a start date. So March 16th is a Sunday. So if you are riding on March 16th, Central Park will be the location starting on that date, as is currently planned. If that plan changes at all, we will communicate that as soon as we know. But for now, I want to make the community aware that starting on March 16th, the downtown transit centers will be closed, and we will be moving to Central Park on that date. As I stated earlier, RPT's plan is to return to the St. Mary's stops on 2nd Street as soon as construction allows. So the time frame of that disruption that we're looking at is much shorter than the time we will be at Central Park. Yeah. And then that concludes my presentation. The QR code that you'll see on the screen takes you directly to our survey. So please scan that QR code and provide us your feedback via the Polco survey.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Thanks again for folks joining us tonight. We know life is busy, so we really appreciate you being here. We do have a chat feature where you can drop any questions you have in, and I will be happy to get those answered by Mike. I know when I was watching Mike, I had a couple questions for you. You're talking about the routes that are going to be detoured. Can you elaborate on how many routes are going to be detoured? Is it all RPT routes, or is it a subset of them? And are you able to help riders understand which ones, if there's any possible way to help shrink down if it isn't all of them, how will people know?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So this affects all of our routes aside from the 505, which is our shopper route. So if you are riding any of our park and ride routes, any of our fixed routes, again, aside from the 505 shopper route, any route that stops at the downtown transit centers, this will affect you.
And is that just where the transit center is? So obviously you're going to a different location, so there's slight detours in there to where you're going, but are some of these detours more significant than others, or are they really just kind of that last little around disruption?
For the most part, most of them will just be a small kind of readjustment of the route to go to Central Park rather than the downtown transit centers. The other piece I would say is there's 14 routes that will go through the Kutsky Park neighborhood and that will service St. Mary's. So those routes are the ones that I was referring to that will move back to 2nd Street as soon as construction near St. Mary's allows us to. So there are 13 of those that pass through that area. The rest will approach Central Park through Civic Center Drive or Broadway or kind of other avenues that will get us to that location.
And I apologize if I missed it, but is there an anticipated length of disruption for, that portion of Second Street that you keep referring to that might have, caused some more buses to reroute off of one of those preferred pathways?
Sure. So the one disclaimer that I'll add there is please stay tuned to the link project updates. The city of Rochester will update that portion of St. Mary's disruption is part of the link, which is a city project. So the city will provide updates on the specifics of that construction as it goes along. However, I do believe that is expected to take place between April and like August or September of 2025. So we do hope it's just a 16-week disruption is what we're expecting. And then we do plan to go back onto Second Street after that 16-week disruption.
Now, people that have lived in a town with construction know that it's usually not a quick thing, and schedules change. Is there a good tool for riders to use to kind of be more in tune with, I don't need to know about all these other routes. I want to know about my route. How can I keep track if there's detours in there, if there's delays? Like, is there a good tool that riders can use to say track their bus, to figure out where their bus is, where their stop is going to be, and just kind of have that confidence of, maybe they're not on social media, they're not following, like, don't listen to local news. Is there a good, reliable tool for folks to be using to help be confident they're going to know when their
Yep.
bus is coming and where they're going to find it?
Yeah, absolutely. So RPT uses the Transit app, which you can download by through Google or your iPhone, whichever platform you use. But that allows real-time tracking of your bus. It also displays all of our bus schedules. So if you're ever confused about when your bus is coming, you can both look at the expected time and then you can see your bus moving on the map and know when you need to leave your house and those types of things. So during a period of construction, what I will say is all of the construction updates and detours will be on our website. We do have a tab on our website that we also have a track your bus tab on our website. So I would also say, in addition to the transit app, please visit rptride.com and you can click the track your bus tab there. But we also announce any of our detours through the transit app and through the bus tracking, the web interface, which is embedded into our website. So those are two very good options for you to keep up to speed with what's happening and how it affects your route. If there is a detour on your specific route, other than kind of these long-term service changes that I've explained here, if you register your route in the transit app, let's just say you ride the 408 every day. You can peg that route as your route, and any detours that pertain to the 408, it'll give you a notification and let you know that there is a detour on your route and that you can check out how that might affect you. So I would definitely encourage using those tools. They're a very efficient way to plan your trip.
Awesome. That is super helpful. And I think I found the right app in there and dropped that into the chat. I also acknowledge that, some people might be watching us off of their phones, and switching into the chat isn't the easiest way to ask a question. So I think, given the group size, that I'm comfortable, releasing the mute button, right? And letting people ask their questions they're on their own. I did see one just come in that says, will the midday routes and times on the 412 be changed? And if so, in what way?
The midday timetables for the 412, they will be adjusted, but we're not planning to change the service interval times or the frequency. So those two things will remain the same. The exact time the bus will arrive at each location will change because the bus is taking a different route, but the frequency and the service intervals will remain the same.
And I'm going to go by the name I'm seeing on the screen of Janet. I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, by all means, feel free to unmute yourself and dig in deeper there with your question if that didn't answer it for you. And that goes for anybody else. If you prefer to unmute and ask your question rather than typing it in, welcome you to do that. And I will take the opportunity to remind or inform, depending on when you joined us, that this presentation is being recorded and we plan to have it onto the website, and we'll make sure that link is dropped back into the chat here before we wrap it up. So if you have, folks in your life that weren't able to make it tonight, because life is incredibly busy, that they're able to watch this presentation, see some of these same images that you were seeing tonight, hear Mike talk about these changes, and more importantly, get that link to the feedback form that we've mentioned a couple times in here. And again, we'll make sure that link makes it to the bottom of this chat window as a way to share some of the feedback, share some of the perspectives on these route changes that are going to be coming our way. Looks like we maybe have another question coming in, Mike, so we'll stay tuned. I also think it's a good opportunity, Mike, if there's other questions you have heard asked in this space that, haven't been asked tonight, but it tends to be a burning question that, by all means, feel free to share, toss that out there. How will the recording be shared? We're going to upload a link to YouTube and have that be on the website that Mike had mentioned before, that RPT ride.com. Thanks, Rachel, for dropping that in. And we are shooting for tomorrow morning. So check back midday and it should be there. And the link for the online feedback is there now.
Great. Yeah, in terms of other questions, one of the ones that I typically get is I think we've already answered. How will folks get updates? I will say once our routes are finalized, we will work with the communications team to get that information out to riders. So that way people will have an opportunity to view the routes, the timetables and such prior to when this all goes live. So that is on our radar to be very communicative to the community about these changes, because it can be confusing catching your bus at a very different location. It's a four-sided park, so we do plan to make wayfinding and things like that very easy on our transit riders. But yeah, we will be communicating between now and when we move in the middle of March.
Well, I do want to thank everybody for coming. Mike and I are planning to be here for a little while longer, so you're welcome to stick around and unmute and ask some questions that you might still have. Those of you that have had your questions answered, I don't believe we have any new content coming in the last half of this time we have reserved, so feel free to drop off and carry on about your evening. As mentioned, let me just get these links back here for you.
Do you have a list of which routes will travel on Center Street and what their schedule will be? How many times a day?
We do have a list of those routes. I don't have all of them in front of me at the moment. And the service intervals will change for those ones. So there's 13 to 14 routes that during that St. Mary's relocation will travel on Center Street. The service intervals range from our park and ride routes run every 15 minutes. Our neighborhood routes run every 30 minutes during peak times and every hour outside peak. But I can certainly follow up with you if you want to. If there's a way you want to put your email in the chat, I can give you specific details. I just don't have them directly in front of me right now.
for whatever reason, my chat window doesn't allow me to type anything.
Well, we can go about this two ways. I can give you Mike's email that you can write down and shoot him an email, or I'm happy to write your email down. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with in this space.
Give me Mike's email, and I will from time to time chat, because I want to find a good solution for me. And the solutions you have are extremely upsetting to my lifestyle.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be here and finding ways to engage in the conversation, so we can make sure everybody's informed and understanding and do the best that any of us possibly can. So Mike's email, and this goes for anybody that's on the call to give him an email, is mcollins, MCOLLINS @rochestermn.gov. And Rachel just dropped it in the chat there for those that can see it.
Okay, I see it there, and I've written it down, so thank you.
Wonderful.
And in further thinking, something that I think it's an adjustment to just closing Center Street to non-bus traffic. Another alternative would make it one way going west only, which would greatly mitigate the other traffic and make it easier for everyone, including the buses.
Hi, I just want to thank you for offering this opportunity for us to find more information. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and spreading the word, right? And knowing that, you know, this information is out there and ways that we do want to hear from people, because we understand that, you know, this is a very important service that people use, or, you know, you live in areas where you are impacted by the changes, and that is not lost on anybody on the team, and working really hard to find how we're going to navigate, literally and figuratively, through the changes that are coming. That'll be great in the end, but you know, as we know, these changes come with things we got to figure out. So thank you all for being here to participate in that process. Just trying to look back. Rachel, Mike, have you heard anything we said we were going to drop into the chat that we haven't done yet? I want to make sure I'm following through on what I said. I see the POCO list in there, Mike's email.
If one, oh, you put the bus tracking in there. Okay.
Yeah,
So
got that in there.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, I think that covers most of it.
I think we have one individual still here. It looks like it's maybe John. I don't know if that's your name or somebody that's using John's account. Did you have any lingering questions that you wanted to ask now that it's just us?
Is this the JW you're looking at?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I can only go off whatever shows up on the screen. So
Right.
it's always a
I raised my
gamble.
voice to not sound too masculine. It's my husband's iPad.
Yep. You never know who's using it, but that's the best I can do.
Right.
Did you
Yeah,
have any
thanks again.
questions?
No, I'm really happy to be a little connected here. I missed the neighborhood meeting yesterday. So it's nice to be able to have an opportunity to learn more. I live off 2nd Street, and so I'm very much impacted by what happens on 2nd Street with everything going on, and would like to do some things to try to work toward preserving the neighborhood as a special neighborhood, which we moved here 3 years ago, and we've lived southwest and northeast, and there's something very special about this part of town. and it just seems to be enveloped over time, one lane of houses at a time. And it really does impact a sense of community, which it's a really great neighborhood to live in. And this being able to see people walking to work, it's an interactive neighborhood, which is different. We used to live southwest on Pill Hill more. And, here people are actually walking. You can hear people speaking in Russian as they walk by. It's just great. And it's a big slice of life. It's a nice combination of lifestyles here. So thanks again.
I said, we appreciate your time. And if any of your neighbors weren't able to make the presentation last night, and we appreciate helping to spread the word that there is the online option and that feedback form.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we should get to know some of our neighbors more. There happen to be other people on this street who have renovated houses that maybe have been for rent or could be for rent in the future if people saving the houses instead of just making them into apartments.
I think we are wrapped unless there's anything else that we wanted to answer for you or touch on.
Oh, me, I'm good. Am I the only one left here?
You are.
Oh, the last shall be first.
But
Okay.
hey,
well,
it's been nice to
again.
be able to,
Yeah.
oftentimes people don't like to chat in the big group or unmute when there's a bunch of people they don't know, or it's
Right.
it's nice to have smaller chats on the side where we can hear a little bit more from folks and don't always have to be the ones that are the first to unmute and stay unmuted and hold the mic for a really long time. So I'm glad we had a chance to chat.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, Rachel, I think you can